In the days of Amraphel, king of Shinar, Arioch, king of Elasar, Chedorlaomer, king of Elam, and Tidal, king of Goim, these kings made war with Bera, king of Sodom, Bershah, king of Gomorrah, Shinab, king of Admah, Shemeber, king of Zeboim, and king of Bela, that is Zor. And all these joined forces in the valley of Siddim, that is the Salt Sea. 12 years they had served Chedorlaomer, but in the 13th year they rebelled. In the 14th year, Chedorlaomer and the kings who were with him came and defeated Rephaim in Asheroth Kernim, the Suzim in Ham, the Emim in Shoev Kiriathaim, and the Horites in the hill country of Sur, as far as El Paran, on the border of the wilderness. Then they turned back and came to En Mizpah, that is Kadesh, and defeated all the country of the Amalekites, and also the Amorites who were dwelling in Hasason Tamar. Then the king of Sodom, the king of Gomorrah, the king of Admah, the king of Zeboim, the king of Bela, that is Sor, went out, and they joined battle in the valley of Siddim with Chedorlaomer, king of Elam, Tidal, king of Goim, Amraphel, king of Shinar, and Arioch, king of Elasar. 4 kings against 5. Now the valley of Siddim was full of bitumen pits, and as the king of Sodom and Gomorrah fled, some fell into them, and the rest fled to the hill country. So the enemy took all the possessions of Sodom and Gomorrah, and all their provisions, and went their way. They also took Lot, the son of Abram's brother, who was dwelling in Sodom, and his possessions, and went their way. Then one who had escaped came and told Abram the Hebrew, who was living by the oaks of Mamre the Amorite, brother of Eshcol and Aner. These were allies of Abram. When Abram heard that his kinsmen had been taken captive, he led forth his trained men born in his house, 318 of them, and went in pursuit as far as Dan. And he divided his forces against them by night, he and his servants, and defeated them and pursued them to Hobah, north of Damascus. Then he brought back all the possessions, and also brought back his kinsman Lot with his possessions, and the women and the people. After his return from the defeat of Chedorlaomer and the kings who were with him, the king of Sodom went out to meet him in the valley of Shaveh, that is, the king's valley. And Melchizedek, king of Salem, brought out bread and wine. He was priest of God Most High, and blessed him and said, Blessed be Abram by God Most High, possessor of heaven and earth, and blessed be God Most High, who has delivered your enemies into your hand. And Abram gave him 1/10 of everything. And the king of Sodom said to Abram, Give me the persons, but take the goods for yourself. But Abram said to the king of Sodom, I have lifted my hand to the Lord God Most High, possessor of heaven and earth, that I would not take a thread or a sandal strap or anything that is yours, lest you should say, I have made Abram rich. I will take nothing but what the young men have eaten, and the share of the man who went with me. Let Aner, Eshcol, and Mamre take their share.
That's God's word. Let's pray. Father, I pray that you would help us to understand the importance of this text, which just can seem at face value as some kind of Middle Eastern skirmish or something of that nature, but rather, Lord, that there's eternal consequences in store in this narrative, in this story. I pray that you would reveal, Lord, what you are doing in communicating this to us. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. When is it right to fight? You're like, well, we're Christians, we don't fight. No, it's not true. My dad used to say to me, never be the one to throw the first punch, but throw the second. Well, that's what my dad used to say. We tend to walk on one side or the other, do we not? Either we are aggressive, aggressive and we want to go to the fight right away, or we never want to and we avoid conflict completely. You know, though, we see examples in the New Testament where there is times where God is clearly passive, more on the passive side, and then there's some times where it's more aggressive and ready to fight. Think of passive as like Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane, and he's going to get arrested, and what is Peter's likelihood is? It pulls out a sword, and what's he do? It cuts off his ear of the servant of the temple, and Jesus says, "What are you doing?" We don't fight with swords. In contrast, though, you can see that God is himself described as a warrior sometimes in the Bible. And that God often is the one that tells them, go into battle, and I will deliver for you. Not to mention, we could look at the passive in somebody like Adam, who was passive with the serpent. And he allowed the serpent to come in and cause havoc because he didn't fight. Romans 12:18, Paul tells us, if possible, as it is dependent on you, live at peace with everyone. Did you notice what he said there? As it is for you, live at peace, which he's also saying that's not always going to be the case. There will be a time to fight. And I think it's even trickier when we get into something like our church, which has got a lot of soldiers in it. Your job is to fight, right? So when is it right to fight? I can't give you an exhaustive list this morning, but we do have an example here in the text of when Abram goes into battle. And it's victorious because of the blessing of God. And also, he, I think, has a right to fight. 2 weeks ago, we talked about God had blessed Abram and blessed those who were close to Abram. He says, you will bless those who bless you, and I will curse those who curse you. And so we have seen that the blessing is overwhelming to the point where they actually were in the land, he and Lot and all of the people that he had either acquired by slavery, which by the way is more of like a household than what we think of slave trade. But regardless, this land couldn't sustain the wealth. In other words, animals. And so Lot goes in one direction, he goes to the east, and he sets up his tents by Sodom. And Abram stays in the land that God has promised him. So we've seen that God has actually had this abundance for him. We've also seen that Lot, like Adam and like Eve, he saw and he took the land, right? He saw that it was good, and so he took it. The problem is it actually, he's going away from the one that was promised to be a blessing to. Now, as we get into the text here this morning, it's actually really important as we now go into this conflict, I'm going to call it. I don't actually know how to describe it, because here's the thing. It described a bunch of nations. Did you catch that? That's what it's talking about. There's 4 nations and there's 5. It's actually city-states. They're not nations as we think of nations, but rather more like a city-state. And and instead of going through and trying to describe all of the different cities, because we don't have time because we're doing a whole chapter, there's 2 alliances that are happening here. We're going to call one is the kings under, we'll see if I get this right, Chedorlaomer. So that's the eastern kings. They're the ones that are more powerful. They had come in, and they had come into the land by Sodom, Gomorrah, and they had actually said they'd come in and they had inflicted much hurting, if you will, on them. But here's the thing. We often think of battles as like totally devastating armies, but that's not actually what they're doing. They go in, they defeat them, and they say, well, now you have to pay us a tribute. You keep working the land, and then you send us back money. That's basically what they're saying. And this goes on for 12 years. And then on the 13th year, this 5 city-states get together and they're like, we've had enough. We are going to revolt. We're going to fight back. and it includes cities like Sodom and Gomorrah. And that is followed by a defeat. By the way, if you see the number 13, just a little numberology here, it usually has to do with a revolt in the Bible. Just throw it out there. It's not a common number, but it almost always has to do with that. So here we see in here that they are defeated. And not only is this four-army of the east like a powerhouse dominating them, they're actually going out to other groups outside and they're collecting their treasures too. Now, what had happened this time is that because they're not paying tribute, they'd come in and decimated, taken it all. It's how defeated are they? Well, verse 10, it tells us, now the Siddim Valley contained many asphalt pits, and the kings of Sodom and Gomorrah fled. Some fell into them, and the rest of them fled into the mountains. The four kings took all the goods of Sodom and Gomorrah and their food and went on. They also took Abram's nephew Lot and his possessions, for he was living in Sodom and when they went on. So how bad were they defeated? Oh, bad. I mean, it was a whooping. They took off running, so much so that they actually are falling into tar pits. These actually still exist, by the way, in many areas. Also, if you know anything about Sodom and Gomorrah, that burns. Guess how what intensifies heat? Petroleum. That's what the tar pits are. So here we have these guys, they're running for their lives, these soldiers, and they're falling into pits and they're hiding up in the mountains. It's utter defeat. Now, why are we even told this story? Well, it tells us in verse 12, because they took Abram's nephew Lot. See, the Bible's not just interested in conflicts in this area, it's actually connected to Lot. And Lot is connected to Abram. Why was Lot taken? Well, it tells us here. He wasn't, if you remember before, he didn't actually live in Sodom before. Where did he live? It said outside of Sodom. Now, at some point, Lot has decided to live in Sodom. Now, we remember back in chapter 13, Sodom is a wicked place. It's told straight out, this is a wicked place. The people are wicked here. So he has decided to go in and live amongst these wicked people. And so he has taken and all of his possessions. It reminded me of Psalm 1. Blessed is the one who does not walk in the steps of the wicked or stand in the way of the sinner or sits in the company of mockers, but who delights in the law of the Lord and who meditates on it day and night. See, here's the reality. Is Lot, when he was with Abram, he was blessed. Why? Because God was with Abram. But Lot has decided to go another direction. He's seated with the sinners. He's in step. And now we could easily be thinking, well, yeah, okay, so what? Aren't we supposed to be in the world? Yeah, we are. But we're not to be the world. Right? In the world, not of the world. We are to be salt and light. Needless to say, he loses everything. Let's look at verse 13. One of the survivors came and told Abram, the Hebrew, who lived near the oaks of belonging to Mamre, the Amorite, and the brother of Eshcol, the brother of Aner. They were bound by a treaty to Abram. So we have one soldier that runs back. He escapes and he runs. Where does he run? He runs up to Abram, which is actually not that far away if we look at the geographical thing. And it's amazing, too, if you think about this four-army state never actually came to Abram. They're destroying everything around him, but not him. Interesting, little side note there. But they're destroying all these things. So he meets up with Abram. He says, Abram, Lot has been taken. Now notice here too that there is a treaty. Abram is with these two guys, and they are also likely nomadic herdsmen as well in the region. He has a treaty with them. Let's keep going. Verse 14. When Abram heard that his relative had been taken prisoner, he assembled 318 trained men born in his household, and they went in pursuit as far as Dan. We just pause here. Like, I don't know about you. When I picture Abram, I got an old guy in my head, right? An old guy that's probably, I'm almost 46, and I'm like, limping around. Well, Abram's in his 70s, and I don't know if you've seen anybody in their 70s, typically not a warrior, but then you start to see too, like how big is this party that he's with? He has 318 trained men born in his household. That's big. Think about it. It's not counting women and children, likely over 1,000, and this is born in his household. We don't have any idea how big it is. So when we think about him, we're thinking, wow, no, really, seriously, like this guy basically owns his own town. He's a powerhouse. But I want you to think about this just a little bit more. He says that there's 318 men, and you're like, wow, that's a lot. Yeah, except for he's going up against city-states. Oh, 4 powerhouses. Oh, that's not that many. No, it's not. That's part of the point. 318, yeah, it may be a big family, but that is nothing in comparison to nation states. Does this remind you of anything? The book of Judges? Gideon, that's right. Gideon has 300 men. God whittles it down to 300 men, remember? And he says, 300 brave men. Why? Why does he do that? Because he wants them to see who's actually winning the battle. Here too. That's exactly what's happening here. Gideon takes 300 men. He goes against 135,000 Midianites. We have no idea how many here because it's definitely more than Midian. It's a lot. Verse 15, and he and his servants deployed against them by night. Smart tactic, sounds like Gideon is too. Defeating them and pursued them as far as Hebron, north of Damascus. They could do a whooping. 318 men with, I don't know how many the other guys had, but defeat a large army. How? Why? So that everyone will know whose God is Abram's. That you don't mess with Abram because who is connected to Abram? His God. The one true God. Because only the one true God could actually have that kind of a defeat. But again, back to that question, how did Abram know it was time to fight? Just real quickly, it doesn't tell us. It doesn't tell us, but I think we can pick up on, and this is not an exhaustive thing, I just was contemplating this earlier this week, that there is something very obvious about this particular fight. Is that Abram is going to rescue those who cannot rescue themselves. For sure, this is a time to fight. Those who are oppressed, who are being destroyed for the benefit of somebody else. Does this sound like anything in our society? It sure does. There's a lack of justice. When is it right to fight? I'll be honest, in our society, I think sometimes babies being executed for financial reasons or for your own comfort. Human trafficking, definitely time to fight. Was it right to fight Hitler? Absolutely. These are reasons to fight. Now, we may categorize fighting differently. It might be in the ballot box. It might be that we actually help financially to an organization, but that's time to fight, right? There's other times to fight too, and I don't want to get hung up into this too much, but there's other times to fight, and we tend to not think of this as fighting so much, but dads, when you protect your family from bad doctrine, that's a fight. When you don't let something creep into your family, that's a fight. When you're a pastor and you say, no, we're not going to do that, or you're a wolf, it's not popular, but it is a fight. And it's a fight for a good reason. It's to protect. It's to protect the who? It's protect those who need protecting. Let's look a little closer. Verse 16, he brought back all the goods. Let's look at his motivation here. He brought back all the goods and also his relatives, Lot's and his goods, as well as the women and other people. He brought it all back. Abram fought to restore people. That's why he's fighting. Those that could not help themselves, and honestly, regardless of their foolishness. Lot was a fool. He's living in Sodom. Now, I don't know about you, but there's a part of me that goes, well, didn't he kind of get what he had coming to him, right? He went and lived in a wicked place with wicked people and associated, like, he's doing business deals with them, like, of course. But no, that's not what he does. He says, no, because of my love for you, because I care about you, I'm going to go back and restore you. You see, that's what he does. He actually goes and he gets him with cost, by the way, to himself. Abram's cost, it's his money, right? His men, they go and he captures back Lot and he gives him all that he had before. But the true heart of this story is not about this, though I think it's important. So let's keep going. We're going to see next that Abram, if I would have made slides, and I'm sorry, I was having a brain freeze and I couldn't figure out how to do graphics this week. I'm sorry. Abram meets two kings here. In verse 17, after Abram returned from the defeat of Chedorlaomer, the king who were with him, the king of Sodom went out to meet him in the valley of Sheva, the king's valley. So first we see that there is one king, he's the king of Sodom. We've already seen that he's wicked, that the city is wicked. So we're going to skip down because it actually has Melchizedek, the other king, in the middle. We're going to skip down to verse 21 and continue talking about the king of Sodom. Then the king of Sodom said to Abram, give me the people, but take the possessions for yourself. I just want you to pause here. Like, you just got everything taken from you, and you, king of Sodom, dare to wheel and deal. That's what he's doing right here. He's approaching the guy that just saved all of his people and his money. He's like, just give me the people. Just give me the people. Well, like he deserves it. But you can keep the money. He doesn't thank Abram. He doesn't say, like, hey, I see what God has done. He just says, hey, this is what I want. It's all about him. All about what he wants. Let's look at Abram's response in verse 22. But Abram said to the king of Sodom, I have raised my hand in an oath to the Lord, the God Most High, creator of heaven and earth, that I will not take a thread or a sandal strap or anything that belongs to you, so that you can never say, I made Abram rich. I will take nothing except what the servants have eaten. But as far as for the share of the men who came with me, Anar and Eshcol and Mamar, they can take their share. He says, I don't want your stuff. He raised a vow, an oath. I don't want people to think I got rich because of you. The reality is he's the one that's going to spend all of the money for the saving. And he wants nothing to do with this king. Why? Do you know, I don't even want a thread. Like, not even a thread. Give the men some food. Whatever these other guys want to do, that's up to them. But as far as me, I don't want any of it. I think there's three major reasons why he doesn't want to do anything. One is he wants to say, no, I didn't get rich because of you. That's what he says here. Abram knows why he is rich. It's because of God's blessing. Not because he's a great soldier, not because the king of Sodom gave him a bunch of things, but because God has blessed him. God has delivered him from their enemies. And it's God that belongs the glory, not you, king of Sodom, and not me. unlike Lot, this is the second one, he doesn't want to be connected to Sodom. He doesn't want to have this connection. He doesn't want to have anything to do with them. He knows that they are opposed to God. He doesn't want to have anything to do with them. And thirdly, he doesn't want to have any obligation over him. You know that when you go into a partnership with someone that's wicked or a group of people that are wicked, you actually then owe them something. Always. It's never just a straight up exchange. And so he doesn't want to be connected to them. He doesn't want them to think that he owes them anything. He doesn't want to be connected with their wealth and how they got their wealth. But rather, he wants the world to see that it's through God and God alone. You know, what's interesting here, this is a little pause, and I found this really interesting this week, that this whole battle, the way that Abram actually approaches this battle, is actually, when you look at the law of Moses later on in Numbers, of what they're supposed to do in warfare and the spoils of warfare, it mirrors what the Mosaic law says. And you can go back and look at it in Numbers 31, it's verses 26, 27-ish. It says, take the plunder that was taken, both man and beast, and divide the plunder into two parts between the warriors who went out to the battle and the congregation. What they're actually supposed to do is they're supposed to give some to the soldiers, and the rest is to be shared with Israel in Numbers 31. And then there's a tribute that is to go to God. There's an amount that is supposed to go to God. Now, here's what's interesting. Hold on to that last thought, because here we're seeing, he's like, give the guys food, I pay them. Give the ones that fought with me, give them their portion. And then he's going to say, there's a portion coming that's going to go to God. But we're going to see that here in a second. So let's look at the second king, Melchizedek. Verse 18, Melchizedek, king of Salem, brought out bread and wine. He was a priest of God Most High. He blessed him and said, Abram is blessed by God Most High, creator of heaven and earth. And he blessed be God Most High, who has handed over your enemies to you. And Abram gave him a tenth of everything. Okay, who is this guy? Who is this guy, Melchizedek? Where did he come from? What significance is he? Let's just pause and go, where did he come from? Ready? No idea. It doesn't say. It doesn't say here, but it does in Hebrews 7, which go back later today, read chapters 5 through 7. It's awesome of Hebrews, so that's your assignment. But here's what he says. He says he was without father or mother or genealogy, having neither a beginning of days nor an end of life. That's what it says in Hebrews 7 about Melchizedek. Well, that's strange. Is it not? Quite strange. Melchizedek, do you know what it means? It means king of righteousness. Well, he's a king of a place called Salem. The root word for that is shalom, peace. Do you know what it later is called? Jerusalem. So he's the king of Jerusalem, place of peace, and he's the king of righteousness. Now that's interesting. What does a king do? He rules. So he's a king that rules over a place of peace, which is exactly the opposite of everything we've seen. Every other city-state has been fighting here. But he here is the king of peace. It's interesting, isn't it? Not only that, he's a righteous king. He's good. He brings about peace. Well, he's also, you could ask, well, who is the God Most High that he's talking about? It's the same God as Abram. It's the same God, God Most High. Elohim of Elohim is what it's saying. He's the top dog. That's God Most High. Same as Abram's. What does a priest do? It says here that he's a priest as well. He's a priest of God. He's a king of righteousness, of a city of peace. And here then it says he's a priest of God Most High. What's a priest do? Now, not a Catholic priest, not that kind of priest, a Jewish priest, right? We have plenty of examples in the book of Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy. We see a lot of priest action, especially in Leviticus, the orders of it. Well, first and foremost, they sacrifice, right? They make sacrifices. But what else do? They're a mediator for man with God, right? They pray in the temple for the people. They burn the incense. They're a mediator between God and man. Does this sound like someone you've maybe read about? If you're thinking of Adam, then you're right. Yeah, no, I know that's not what you were thinking of. But it's true. Adam is a priest. He's a priest king. He's a mediator. He is the representation of God on earth. He is to rule on behalf of God. He is to speak for God like a prophet and priest, to mediate between God and man. That's what he's supposed to be doing. Not that he does it, but he messed up. But God, if you remember, had promised that he would send a son, someone that would be a better Adam, if you will. And as we see through Abram, as we read through Genesis, we see that it's going to be through Abram that this blessing would come to the world. As we keep going in the story, though, we will see that Abram will become a father of a great nation, in fact, nations. And God sets up a temporary priesthood. Now, this is what we get into when we get into Exodus. After the children of Israel are rescued, there is a new priesthood. Do you remember this? Aaron, the priesthood of Aaron, the Levites. God actually sets up a priesthood for him and Aaron. Why? Again, now, there is a separation. If you remember the garden, there's a separation between God and man, and yet God is continually trying to dwell with his people, and he makes a way through this way of a priest, of the tabernacle that sits in the middle of the camp, and they were making endless sacrifices over and over and over again, covering of the sin of the people, and it just continues and continues. But God is promise that there will be someone later to come. Now, there's a problem here as we look at this text. You're like, I don't see any problem. Except for before we saw that Abram actually followed the law that didn't even exist yet, right? But there's a law in Numbers 16 and Exodus 30 that no king can also be a priest. Now, you might say, well, that's before that was made after. Yeah, that's true, but isn't it interesting that here we have a king of the righteousness, of the place of peace, and he's also a priest of the king of God Most High. In fact, if you look at 2 Chronicles 26, you'll see King Uzzah, he tries to become a priest. He enters the temple and he goes after the bread to burn incense at the altar. Sorry, no bread. To burn incense at the altar, which was a duty of the priests. The priests confront him, and God judges him because he went in and tried to become a priest. He actually has got leprosy. But here, Melchizedek is a righteous king and the priest of God Most High. We'll talk about that in a second here. Melchizedek, what does he do? He blesses Abram. Actually, it's a declaration. And in some ways, I think even prophetic, because he's saying, he blessed him and said, Abram is blessed by God Most High. He knows that. He knows who God Most High is. He's declaring, the creator of heaven and earth, that is the one that has blessed you, and he has handed your enemies over to you. He declares that the victory that you have is not because of you, your great skills, but rather because of God Most High. But did you see the end of verse 20? It says, and Abram gave him a tenth of everything. You remember Numbers 31? How I said that they were to give a portion back to God? What does he, and I have some commentaries are like, well, he gave them a tenth of the spoils. No, he didn't take the spoils, remember? So what is he giving a tenth of? Everything he has. He's giving a tenth of everything he has, recognizing that it was God's victory, recognizing who actually did the work. Did you know that the tenth that we often think of is usually the giving? People are like, oh, I give a tenth. That was just to the priest, by the way. The tenth was only to the priest. It was more like 23%. Is that right, Drew? I think it was like 23%. Yeah. Under the law of Moses, they were to give a tenth to the priests. So who is this guy? Who is this Melchizedek that that he would bless Abram, that he would be a king and a priest, and not only that, Abram recognizes who he is, and he says, I give you a tenth. Turn to Psalm 110. Do it for reals. Turn to Psalm 110. This is the most quoted passage in the New Testament, the most quoted Old Testament passage in the New Testament. So you should have it nearly memorized, if not memorized. Verse 1, this is the declaration of the Lord to my Lord. This is David talking. Who's David? He's the great king of Israel, the one that was promised that through him there would be a king that would sit on the throne forever. This guy, that's who's talking right now. He says, this is the declaration of the Lord to my Lord. Lord to my Lord. Somebody over him. Two lords. He says, sit at my right hand until I make your enemies a footstool. Right hand. What's the right hand? It's the place of authority. So one Lord is saying to the other Lord, sit at my right hand until I make your enemies a footstool. Done. That's what you do with a footstool, right? The Lord will extend his mighty scepter from Zion, ruling over your surrounding enemies. Your people will volunteer on the day of the battle in the holy splendor from the womb of the dawn, and the dew from your young youth belong to you. The Lord has sworn an oath, and he will not take it back. You are priests forever, according to the order of Melchizedek. Here, David is saying that remember God's promise. Remember God's promise to not only to Adam, but also through Abram, and also here David as well, that there is one that is coming, one who is a king forever on your throne. He's your Lord. He's above you, David. He's the Lord of lords. He's being given this power and authority. And not only that, he is a priest forever in the order of Melchizedek. He's a king, so he will rule, but he's a priest, so he will do priestly things. But it can't be in the line of Aaron. Why? They don't live forever. They keep dying. And they sacrifice, and they sacrifice, and their sacrifices are never enough, and they keep sacrificing, and then they have raised up one more priest, and then another priest, and another high priest, and another high priest, and it just keeps going for generations and generations, thousands of years. But a priest that has no beginning and no end, who can mediate for you and for me, who can make a sacrifice that lasts. See, part of the raw problem with the Levites and Aaron's line is they were full of sin. Their sacrifices were never enough. And they would die. We don't need another priest like Aaron. We don't need another king as good as David was, but he still was not that great. We need a king who has no end and a priest who has no sin and has a sacrifice that covers our sin. A priest who can endlessly intercede for us. A better Adam, a better David, a better Moses, a better Abram, a better Abraham, a better Aaron. We need God. Who is Melchizedek? I'm not sure. Drew and I have talked about it. He has one view. I kind of have another. Either he is a type of Christ that establishes an order, or he is what they call a theophany, Christ himself that comes. Regardless, the point is, he points to Christ. Hebrews 5 tells us, for every high priest taken from among the men is appointed in a matter of pertaining to God for his people, to offer both gifts and sacrifices for sin. He is able to deal gently with those who are ignorant and are going astray. You see that? There's a personal aspect here. He gives sacrifices for them. He knows them. Since he is also clothed with wickedness, because of this, he must make an offering for his own sin as well as the sin of the people. No one takes his honor on himself. Instead, a person is called by God, just as Aaron was. In the same way, Christ did not exalt himself, but became a priest. But God said to him, "You are my son. Today I've become your father." Also, in another place it says, guess what place? You are a priest forever in the order of Melchizedek. Jesus is the everlasting priest. The one who can relate to us, being made fully man, that he could take on flesh, give the ultimate sacrifice himself, one without blemish, without shame. He gave a better and final sacrifice to cover the believer's sin. Why is this story here? Because it points to Jesus. The final king, the greater high priest, the great redeemer of his people. Now, how do we apply this today? Let's just think about how we apply this today. Well, I don't want to be gruesome, but I had a dream last night. Might be classified as a nightmare, and I don't have dreams. Just don't have dreams. I'm going to tell you my dream. It's not a prophetic dream, if you're wondering. It's a dream, but I believe that God gave me a dream for you this morning. I believe that because it woke me up in a terror. My dream began like this. It was a sketch comedy. I love sketch comedy. It's hilarious. But there was a moment in the dream where the laughter stopped and things were not funny anymore. And I found myself looking as a plane was being loaded with body bags. And it dawned on me I knew everyone that was being loaded up. And then it dawned on me I was one of them. Here's the reality. When I woke, my thought was, the death rate's still 100% right now. And what you don't need is a pep talk. The world is perpetually trying to make us feel better, right? Everything is about your wellness and that's not what you need. Because here's the reality. You and I will one day face the creator of heaven and earth. And either he's going to say to us, well done, good and faithful servant, or he's going to say, depart from me, I did not know you. Who are you? And then it dawned on me, as I was contemplating at 3 o'clock in the morning, as one does when you have a dream like that. It dawned on me that in my dream, that without a priest forever, I would be hopeless. We need a priest that continues not to intercede for us for always. We need one that a sacrifice is forever. We need a priest that can relate to us, know us in our weakness. Why is this applicable today? Because Jesus is a priest forever. And without him, all hope is gone. But with him, all hope is found. Let me say that again. Without him, all hope is lost. But with him, all hope is found. It's not morbid to die and face the priest that is interceding for you. It's a welcome home ceremony. Because Jesus is a priest forever, we have access to God and God's ear all the time. Because he is a priest forever, he has made a final sacrifice, meaning our past sins, our present sins, and future sins are covered by him. Here's the big question today. Do you know your high priest? Do you desire to be in the safety of his sacrifice for you? Did you notice as we move in that what Melchizedek brings and offers? Bread and wine. Now, I went through all of the codes so that you didn't have to of the sacrificial. The closest one that you can get is a grain offering, but it's grain and wine. I was like, well, that doesn't add up. Bread's different than grain. And I just kept thinking, what is there? Oh, wait. There's this one that is the greater, the priest forever. And there's a moment where he takes bread and wine. It's at the Last Supper, and he says, this is my body broken for you. Making an offering. This is my body, bread broken for you. Eat it in remembrance of me. In the same way, he takes the cup. He says, this is my blood poured out for you. For the covering of your sins. Eat in remembrance of me. Let's do it.